one story a week, and share our thoughts about the stories, and also share different kinds of things about our lives that intersect with the stories that we're reading. So it's a really fun way to get to know each other and to just enjoy literature. I think of it a lot of times the way it's fun to go to a movie with friends or family members and then talk about it after we leave the movie. And if we go to a movie by ourselves, we don't have anybody to talk to about it with until we found someone who also saw that movie. So this is a way to kind of be all reading something together. And I'll explain kind of how it works. But I've been involved with People and Stories, Gente, Cuentos, which is a nonprofit that does these kind of programs in all sorts of different places, in churches, in senior citizen centers, in drug rehab centers, in homeless shelters, in many public libraries, in adult ed programs, in prisons. I've mostly worked in prisons in Central Jersey and a little bit further south, federal and state prisons. I've worked with English speaking and Spanish speaking inmates. And that's really, really interesting. And so this program is very universal. You can really do it with anybody. So it's going to be fun. So I picked out some stories that I think we're really going to enjoy. And I'll let you know how it's going to work in a minute. But let's see if, I imagine that by now you're all Zoom experts after we've all had lots of experience. So, I think it is a good idea to turn off our mics if we're not speaking, just because the audio quality is better for everybody else and it uses less bandwidth. So that generally is a good idea. Not that I want to shut anybody down, but we just have to get used to that. Turning our mic on when we're speaking, using the raise hand or just jumping in if nobody else is speaking, so that we can but that way we won't hear everybody's dogs barking and phones ringing and doorbells ringing and, children asking for juice and whatever might be going on, which is also fun, but it can be really distracting. And since we're going to try to keep this within an hour, we want to, keep it focused. So I'd love to hear a little bit about each of you. Whoever would like to jump in.
Well, hi, my name is Pilar. I live in West Orange for I don't know how many years. And I know Jose since last year, right, Jose?
Yes.
Yeah. I love to read. I love to write. Yes. That's it.
Great. Thank you, Pilar. Welcome. If you'd like to turn your cameras on, it's nice for everybody to be able to see each other. If you can't or you prefer not to, that's fine. It's not a requirement, but it's fun to be able to see each other's faces in the group, everybody's expressions, and just get to know each other a little bit, but it's totally up to you. Mm-hmm. You might be in a crowded place or it's not comfortable for you today, or that's fine. So who else would like to introduce themselves?
Yes, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Jose Romero, one of the reference librarians here at West Orange Public Library. I particularly like reading literature from Latin America. I started late in life. I think I really started reading literature from Latin America working on my second master's at Rutgers, Newark. So it's a pleasure to have Marcy here today. I am a big supporter of her, and I really, really appreciate her coming on. And I also appreciate everybody who's tuned in, especially Father, because I know I reached out to him today. And so again, thank you everybody for participating in this program today.
I was going to say, I took that other class on Marquez, and I think at that time I said that 100 Years of Solitude was like my favorite book ever. And I read it once, and then like about 20 years later, a book club that I was in was reading it. So I read it a second time. And then the second time I was reading it, I was thinking, why did I love this book so much? And then 30 pages in, like again, still the best book I ever read. And I also liked Love in the Time of Cholera.
Beautiful. Yeah. They're all great. There's a lot of them out there, so you can read the other ones.
I think I have read, I think I did read No One Writes to the Colonel a
That's
very
great
long
also.
time ago.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. Yeah, I remember you saying that, and I think your daughter was with you.
Yes, yes.
I remember that. I remember her. Say hello for me.
She was a Spanish major in college.
Oh, wow.
I think she read it in the original. She read it in Spanish, not me.
That's great. That's great. So who else would like to say a few words about Maria Clara?
I'm Maria
Great.
Clara Rojas. I'm from Gabriel Garcia Marquez country. I'm Colombian.
Oh,
So, and at this moment, I'm rereading his biography, autobiography. So, yeah. And
fantastic.
it's, yeah. I've read some from Garcia Marquez, of course. I'm Colombian, so yes. I like his books.
That's great. Welcome. Thank you. So good to meet you all. And who else would like to say something?
I'll go next.
Yes.
Miguel Hernandez. I'm a priest here at the Holy Trinity Episcopal Church in West Orange for the last 7 years, originally from El Salvador. And I have been reading literature here and there. Unfortunately, I did not have the opportunity like regular students who are able to, go to school normally. I never went to school normally because the country that I came from was continually in war. So, we go for a month, then we stop for the whole year, and then we go back for another 2 months. And so my schooling was really sporadic. And I went to school to become an engineer eventually because it was going to be a way for me to survive, to break out of poverty, to get into a nice job and everything. And it turns out that it worked out really well in that regard. But on the other hand, I did not have the time to read anything for leisure. It was later on in life, that I started to pick up books again. I have moved to New York around 1977. And by the time I was trying to read Spanish again, I have forgotten it. In my effort to learn English, go to school, work, because that's what I did. Working full time and going to school full time. I don't know how I did it, but I did it. And then, after I decided, I want to read again, I couldn't pick up a book. It's amazing, I was trying to read everything in Spanish and I couldn't. So I realized, I'm lacking here. So I made an effort to read all those books in Spanish. And eventually I read them in English because, I wanted to get another perspective on the book. So I have read 100 Years of Solitude maybe like 3 or 4 times in Spanish and in English. Love in Time of Cholera, of course, and many others. I have read most of Marquez's books, and I try to read them in Spanish most of the time. And all I can tell you is that through reading, I have come up with some stories that I write too. Whenever I have some free time, on my experiences, and I will end quickly because I know there are other people who want to speak. When I was, like I said, I had a hard time going to school. I spent like maybe 3 years on first grade. I tell this to people because sometimes, they don't know the stories, right? The peoples and the stories. 3 years in first grade. Because I went to the class to sleep. My mother used to wake us up at 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock in the morning to do chores, to work. I mean, we were really working for a living. And so I went to school to sleep. So on the 3rd round on first grade, I don't know how, but the teacher asked a question. And he said, can somebody tell me what the donkeys eat? And I raised my hand and I said, they eat herbs, hierbas. I told them in Spanish, right? They eat hierbas. And he says to me, you don't need to be in first grade. I'll move you to second grade. And that's the only reason why I did not spend 3 years in first grade. Now, related to Garcia Marquez, in one of his short stories, there is this passage where a doctor goes into a town, he's accommodated into a family, and and the man says to the person who is cooking, prepare something for the doctor to eat. And he said, what do you like to eat? And the man says, I like to eat some herbs. And then the lady asks, what kind of herbs do you want to eat? He says, those that the donkeys eat. So I don't know whether the teacher had, read that book and because of that, he moved me to the second grade. I never know. but that's one of the reasons why I like Garcia Marquez, because
That's an amazing story. What an amazing story. Wow.
It is.
Well, this is a great example. Thank you so much for sharing that, Miguel. That's beautiful. This is why this program is called People and Stories. So some of the stories come from these writers and some of the stories come from us, and often they intersect. And so that's like the best introduction I could ever think of. So thank you. Very beautiful. Very beautiful. Thank you. And I think you're muted, but maybe we should see if Colleen wants to say something, introduce herself. Hi, Colleen. Or maybe you just want to listen, that's okay. Or you might want to talk a little bit later, that's fine. Or maybe you stepped out to get a coffee or something, no problem. No problem. Well, I think that we'll move on and we'll see if, if Colleen comes back, then that's great and she can jump in anytime. So thank you for these lovely introductions. And I see we have avid, excited readers, very motivated readers, and that's wonderful. And thank you to Jose for organizing and planning with us so that we could do this.
Right.
A real pleasure to work with you again. Thank you.
You're welcome, Oscar.
And one of these days we'll meet in person. So usually what we do is we sit in a circle in a room with or without a table or whatever, just comfortably. And I would normally hand out photocopies of the story to everybody as we came in. And I will read the story aloud. And that allows us to be sort of sharing the story in real time together. And it's always fun. You notice new things every time you hear it or read it another time. So I know that Jose shared the stories with you, or at least this one for this week. You don't have to read them ahead if you're busy. It really doesn't require any preparation. When we do this in person, the participants don't have the stories ahead of time. They get them when they walk in the room that day. So it's kind of like a little bit of a surprise maybe, but you don't really have to prepare. If you want to read them ahead, that's great. And it's nice for you to have them so you could read them again, so you could share them with someone. So I read the story aloud, and after I finish reading the story, I start to ask questions that are both about the story and about everybody's own experiences or things that we notice about the story. I think with this group, we won't have any trouble getting the discussion going. I don't think this is a shy group, so great. And I would just say when we get to the discussion part, like I said, it's a small group. Jump in if nobody's speaking, but we should be aware that somebody else may want to be maybe kind of waiting to speak. So we'll try to kind of take turns, and you can use the raise hand icon that will show up when you go to reactions on the bottom. If you put your cursor like low on the bottom of the screen, then there's like where you can clap or put a thumbs up or something and a heart. There's also that raise hand option. And so you can do that. We can also open the chat and anybody can write things in the chat, reactions to the story or a question. We'll use it all and we'll see how it goes. I haven't directed one of these programs on Zoom, but I've taught hours and hours and hours of classes on Zoom, and it works out. It works out okay. So second best to being in person together, but I'm grateful that we have it because it allows us to do something like this that otherwise maybe we would have to wait. So I am going to share my screen, and I'll stop sharing my screen when I'm done reading the story, but that way everyone can see the story on the screen and not have to be going, from your paper to, the screen or whatever. It sounds like participants have liked that mode. And then when I'm finished reading the story, I'll stop sharing my screen so that it's better for everybody to see each other. More fun to see each other than to see a typed page. So I'm going to share my screen now, if that's okay with everybody. And then I'll just, so you'll have the people on the side or on the bottom or however it works out. And I am going to go down here to my PDF, and here we have this. So, so I think it sounds like everybody kind of knows who Garcia Marquez is, and I don't like to waste a lot of time on teaching a lesson about lots of details about the writers, because we want to save the time for discussion. So I'm going to start reading this, and we'll just enjoy it together, and then we'll discuss. So, Baltasar's Marvelous Afternoon. And some may say it Balthasar. I always tend to say it Baltasar because in Spanish, in the original, it's just a T and not a TH. So I'm used to that. And sometimes the TH is still pronounced as a T in some languages. So, so here we go. Baltasar's Marvelous Afternoon. The cage was finished. Baltasar hung it under the eave from force of habit. And when he finished lunch, everyone was already saying that it was the most beautiful cage in the world. So many people came to see it that a crowd formed in front of the house, and Baltasar had to take it down and close the shop. You have to shave, Ursula, his wife, told him. You look like a capuchin. It's bad to shave after lunch, said Baltasar. He had 2 weeks' growth, short, hard, and bristly hair like the mane of a mule, and the general expression of a frightened boy. But it was a false expression. In February, he was 30. He had been living with Ursula for 4 years without marrying her and without having children. And life had given him many reasons to be on guard, but none to be frightened. He did not even know that for some people, the cage he had just made was the most beautiful one in the world. For him, accustomed to making cages since childhood, it had been hardly any more difficult than the others. Then rest for a while, said the woman. With that beard, you can't show yourself anywhere. While he was resting, he had to get out of his hammock several times to show the cage to the neighbors. Ursula had paid little attention to it until then. She was annoyed because her husband had neglected the work of his carpenter shop to devote himself entirely to the cage, and for 2 weeks had slept poorly, turning over and muttering incoherencies, and he hadn't thought of shaving. But her annoyance dissolved in the face of the finished cage. When Baltasar woke up from his nap, she had ironed his pants and a shirt. She had put them on a chair near the hammock and had carried the cage to the dining table. She regarded it in silence. How much will you charge? She asked. I don't know, Baltasar answered. I'm going to ask for 30 pesos to see if they'll give me 20. Ask for 50, said Ursula. You lost a lot of sleep in these 2 weeks. Furthermore, it's rather large. I think it's the biggest cage I've ever seen in my life. Baltasar began to shave. Do you think they'll give me 50 pesos? That's nothing for Mr. Chepe Montiel, and the cage is worth it, said Ursula. You should ask for 60. The house lay in the stifling shadow. It was the first week of April, and the heat seemed less bearable because of the chirping of the cicadas. When he finished dressing, Baltasar opened the door to the patio to cool off the house, and a group of children entered the dining room. The news had spread. Dr. Octavio Giraldo, an old physician, happy with life but tired of his profession, thought about Baltasar's cage while he was eating lunch with his invalid wife. On the inside terrace, where they put the table on hot days, there were many flower pots and 2 cages with canaries. His wife liked birds, and she liked them so much that she hated cats because they could eat them up. Thinking about her, Dr. Giraldo went to see a patient that afternoon, and when he returned, he went by Baltasar's house to inspect the cage. There were a lot of people in the dining room. The cage was on display on the table with its enormous dome of wire, 3 stories inside, with passageways and compartments, especially for eating and sleeping, and swings in the space set aside for the birds' recreation. It seemed like a small-scale model of a gigantic ice factory. The doctor inspected it carefully without touching it, thinking that in effect, the cage was better than its reputation and much more beautiful than any he had ever dreamed of for his wife. "This is a flight of the imagination," he said. He sought out Baltasar among the group of people and, fixing his maternal eyes on him, added, "You would have been an extraordinary architect." Baltasar blushed. "Thank you," he said. "It's true," said the doctor. He was smoothly and delicately fat, like a woman who had been beautiful in her youth, and he had delicate hands. His voice seemed like that of a priest speaking Latin. "You wouldn't even need to put birds in it," he said, making the cage turn in front of the audience's eyes as if you were auctioning it off. "It would be enough to hang it in the trees so it could sing by itself." He put it back on the table, thought a moment, looking at the cage, and said, "Fine, then I'll take it." "It's sold," said Ursula. "It belongs to the son of Mr. Chepe Montiel," said Baltasar. "He ordered it specially." The doctor adopted a respectful attitude. "Did he give you the design?" "No," said Baltasar. "He said he wanted a large cage, like this one for a pair of troupials." The doctor looked at the cage. "But this isn't for troupials." "Of course it is, doctor," said Baltasar, approaching the table. The children surrounded him. "The measurements are carefully calculated," he said, pointing to the different compartments with his forefinger. Then he struck the dome with his knuckles, and the cage filled with resonant chords. "It's the strongest wire you can find, and each joint is soldered outside and in," he said. "It's even big enough for a parrot," interrupted one of the children. "That it is," said Baltasar. The doctor turned his head. "Fine, but he didn't give you the design," he said. "He gave you no exact specifications, aside from making it a cage big enough for troupials. Isn't that right?" "That's right," said Baltasar. "Then there's no problem," said the doctor. "One thing is a cage big enough for troupials, and another is this cage. There's no proof that this is the one you were asked to make." "It's this very one," said Baltasar, confused. "That's why I made it." The doctor made an impatient gesture. "You could make another one," said Ursula, looking at her husband. And then to the doctor, "You're not in any hurry." "I promised it to my wife for this afternoon," said the doctor. "I'm very sorry, doctor," said Baltasar, "but I can't sell you something that's sold already." The doctor shrugged his shoulders, drying the sweat from his neck with a handkerchief. He contemplated the cage silently, with the fixed, unfocused gaze of one who looks at a ship which is sailing away. "How much did they pay you for it?" Baltasar sought out Ursula's eyes without replying. 60 pesos, she said. The doctor kept looking at the cage. "It's very pretty," he sighed. "Extremely pretty." Then, moving toward the door, he began to fan himself energetically, smiling, and the trace of that episode disappeared forever from his memory. "Montiel is very rich," he said. In truth, Jose Montiel was not as rich as he seemed, but he would have been capable of doing anything to become so. A few blocks from there, in a house crammed with equipment, where no one had ever smelled a smell that couldn't be sold, he remained indifferent to the news of the cage. His wife, tortured by an obsession with death, closed the doors and windows after lunch and lay for 2 hours with her eyes opened to the shadow of the room, while Jose Montiel took his siesta. The clamor of many voices surprised her there. Then she opened the door to the living room and found a crowd in front of the house, and Baltasar with the cage in the middle of the crowd, dressed in white, freshly shaved, with that expression of decorous candor with which the poor approach the houses of the wealthy. "What a marvelous thing!" Jose Montiel's wife exclaimed, with a radiant expression, leading Baltasar inside. "I've never seen anything like it in my life," she said, and added, annoyed by the crowd which piled up at the door. But bring it inside before they turn the living room into a grandstand. Baltasar was no stranger to Jose Montiel's house. On different occasions, because of his skill, arid, forthright way of dealing, he had been called in to do minor carpentry jobs. But he never felt at ease among the rich. He used to think about them, with their ugly and argumentative wives, about their tremendous surgical operations, and he always experienced a feeling of pity. When he entered their houses, he couldn't move without dragging his feet. Is Pepe home? He asked. He had put the cage on the dining room table. He's at school, said Jose Montiel's wife, but he shouldn't be long. And she added, Montiel is taking a bath. In reality, Jose Montiel had not had time to bathe. He was giving himself an urgent alcohol rub in order to come out and see what was going on. He was such a cautious man that he slept without an electric fan, so he could watch over the noises of the house while he slept. Adelaide, he shouted, what's going on? Come and see what a marvelous thing, his wife shouted. Jose Montiel, obese and hairy, his towel draped around his neck, appeared at the bedroom window. What is that? Pepe's cage, said Baltasar. His wife looked at him perplexedly. Whose? Pepe's, replied Baltasar, and then turning toward Jose Montiel, Pepe ordered it. Nothing happened at that instant, but Baltasar felt as if someone had just opened the bathroom door on him. Jose Montiel came out of the bedroom in his underwear. Pepe, he shouted. He's not back, whispered his wife, motionless. Pepe appeared in the doorway. He was about 12 and had the same curved eyelashes and was as quietly pathetic as his mother. Come here, Jose Montiel said to him. Did you order this? The child lowered his head. Grabbing him by the hair, Jose Montiel forced Pepe to look him in the eye. Answer me. The child bit his lip without replying. Montiel, whispered his wife. Jose Montiel let the child go and turned toward Baltasar in a fury. I'm very sorry, Baltasar, he said, but you should have consulted me before going on. Only to you would it occur to contract with a minor. As he spoke, his face recovered its serenity. He lifted the cage without looking at it and gave it to Baltasar. Take it away at once and try to sell it to whomever you can, he said. Above all, I beg you not to argue with me. He patted him on the back and explained, the doctor has forbidden me to get angry. The child had remained motionless without blinking until Baltasar looked at him uncertainly with the cage in his hand. Then he emitted a guttural sound like a dog's growl and threw himself on the floor screaming. Jose Montiel looked at him unmoved while the mother tried to pacify him. Don't even pick him up, he said. Let him break his head on the floor and then put salt and lemon on it so he can rage to his heart's content. The child was shrieking tearlessly while his mother held him by the wrists. Leave him alone, Jose Montiel insisted. Baltasar observed the child as he would have observed the death throes of a rabid animal. It was almost 4 o'clock. At that hour in his house, Ursula was singing a very old song and cutting slices of onion. Pepe, said Baltasar. He approached the child, smiling, and held the cage out to him. The child jumped up, embraced the cage, which was almost as big as he was, and stood looking at Baltasar through the wire work without knowing what to say. He hadn't shed one tear. Baltasar, said Jose Montiel softly, I told you already to take it away. Give it back, the woman ordered the child. Keep it, said Baltasar, and then to Jose Montiel, after all, that's what I made it for. Jose Montiel followed him into the living room. Don't be foolish, Baltasar, he was saying, blocking his path. Take your piece of furniture home and don't be silly. I have no intention of paying you a cent. It doesn't matter, said Baltasar. I made it expressly as a gift for Pepe. I didn't expect to charge anything for it. As Baltasar made his way through the spectators who were blocking the door, Jose Montiel was shouting in the middle of the living room. He was very pale and his eyes were beginning to get red. Idiot, he was shouting. Take your trinket out of here. The last thing we need is for some nobody to give orders in my house. Son of a bitch. In the pool hall, Baltasar was received with an ovation. Until that moment, he thought that he had made a a better cage than ever before, that he'd had to give it to the son of Jose Montiel so he wouldn't keep crying, and that none of these things was particularly important. But then he realized that all of this had a certain importance for many people, and he felt a little excited. So they gave you 50 pesos for the cage? 60, said Baltasar. Score one for you, someone said. You're the only one who's managed to get such a pile of money out of Mr. Chepe Montiel. We have to celebrate. They bought him a beer, and Baltasar responded with a round for everybody, since it was the first time he had ever been out drinking. By dusk, he was completely drunk, and he was talking about a fabulous project of 1,000 cages at 60 pesos each, and then of 1,000,000 cages until he had 60 million pesos. We have to make a lot of things to sell to the rich before they die, he was saying, blind drunk. All of them are sick and they're going to die. They're so screwed up, they can't even get angry anymore. For 2 hours, he was paying for the jukebox, which played without interruption. Everybody toasted Baltasar's health, good luck, and fortune, and the death of the rich. But at mealtime, they left him alone in the pool hall. Ursula had waited for him until 8, with a dish of fried meat covered with slices of onion. Someone told her that her husband was in the pool hall, delirious with happiness, buying beers for everyone, and she didn't believe it because Baltasar had never got drunk. When she went to bed, almost at midnight, Baltasar was in a lighted room where there were little tables, each with 4 chairs and an outdoor dance floor where the plovers were walking around. His face was smeared with rouge, and since he couldn't take one more step, he thought he wanted to lie down with 2 women in the same bed. He had spent so much that he had to leave his watch in pawn with the promise to pay the next day. A moment later, spread-eagled in the street, he realized that his shoes were being taken off, but he didn't want to abandon the happiest dream of his life. The women who passed on their way to 5 o'clock mass didn't look at him, thinking he was dead. Okay, well, I'm going to stop sharing now and see if we can delve into this story a little bit. And let's start with, I'm going to tell you the page, and you can find it on your copy if you want, and I'll just reread a little short passage. I think the description of the bird cage is so elaborate, and it's really, for me, it seems like kind of the centerpiece of the story. It's what sets everything in motion. So at the bottom of page 107, which is the second page of where the story actually starts, and without the beginning pages from the book, where it says there were a lot of people in the living room at the bottom of 107, and then it goes on to 108. The cage was on display on the table with its enormous dome of wire, 3 stories inside, with passageways and compartments especially for eating and sleeping, and swings in the space set aside for the birds' recreation. It seemed like a small-scale model of a gigantic ice factory. The doctor inspected it carefully without touching it, thinking that in effect, the cage was better than its reputation, and much more beautiful than any he had ever dreamed of for his wife. This is a flight of the imagination, he said. You would have been an extraordinary architect. And I'm just going to jump a little bit further down because it's still talking about the bird cage, where the doctor says you wouldn't even need to put birds in it. It would be enough to hang it in the trees so it could sing by itself. So what do you think of that description? Have you ever seen something like this? Have you ever seen some work of art or construction that just, kind of took your breath away like this? What do you think?
I remember when I was at St. Peter's undergrad, there was a Vatican show at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and I felt visiting the exhibit that it was something that I've never seen before in my life, and I was at awe of all the works and all the paintings, and I don't think I've ever seen anything quite like that since that first experience with that exhibit. So you could tell how elaborate the cage is and how it looks to everybody, you know, who saw it. And to me, Balazar he's above all of it. You know, he's like, you know, I know I'm a great artist. It doesn't even matter at that point because the design is out there. No matter who, you know, whoever takes the cage, it's fine with him because he feels confident enough of who he is and what he can produce.
Fantastic. Somebody else? Does this remind you of something you maybe saw or having such a strong reaction to some work of art or a sculpture, a painting, could be anything, a building? Lots of beauty out there in the world, you know, and it is amazing how when we see something, it sticks with us, we remember.
Yeah, but also the, you know, we get just the image of a beautiful cage and all the little pieces that make it, but also the energy that he puts in there. I mean, he forgot about himself for 2 weeks. You know, he was not even taking care of himself properly. He was thinking about it continuously. So a lot of effort that goes into it. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like a very intense experience for him. Yeah, yeah. Are there times that any of you get so immersed in a project or the work you're doing or an important task that you just kind of let everything else go? Does that resonate? I know sometimes we all can get like very absorbed in something, you know, whether it's an artwork or a practicing music, or I don't know who's had that experience and what were you doing when you were just let everything else go? Totally taken up with this task or this project.
I can do that. When I get focused on something, usually I forget about the time. Sometimes even I forget about eating and all that. I write, so I remember one day, one night I started writing, and when I realized it was like 6 in the morning, and I spent the whole night writing, and I didn't feel that the time, nothing, I just like get like very focused on whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. 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 So
and what I like about this is Baltasar is an artist and very honorable. He didn't care who ordered that piece of art that he made. He just wanted to make it because that's what he liked to do, and he was an artist. So didn't matter about the carpentry or whatever. He just wanted to make that beautiful piece of art. And for him, it was not like nothing, because that's what they say. That's what he used to do, just cages, and it was okay. It was another cage, but he made it because that's what he liked.
But he did care who ordered it. He was not going to sell it to the doctor. He gave his word that this next cage, and in his mind, in his heart, this cage was for Pepe, and he wasn't going to give it to somebody else and then make another one for Pepe. This one had to be for Pepe. In fact, he even didn't understand when the doctor was asking him, well, just sell this one to me and make another one. He got confused. So that's very interesting. Also, he made this cage with Pepe in mind. So it had to be for him, and he wasn't going to veer from that. So what do you think about that? Did it seem like, I mean, he didn't get any money for the cage.
Yeah, that's what I say. He was an honorable man. He just made it because, and it was for that, for Pepe, and that's it, because he ordered it, and he didn't care about the money. He didn't care about anything.
No.
He didn't care about
anything, just like.
Yeah.
And the other thing that made me think is about in my country, the small towns are like that. But something happened, everybody goes to the place. It's just like the the happening of the day, of the week, or whatever it is. So everybody goes there, and you know that just the mouth to mouth, everybody is telling. So it's fun to see.
News travels fast in small towns. Mhm.
Yeah.
Pilar, I think you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I think Baltasar, he worked from his heart, you know, and the child, Pepe, is a child. Then really, and this, what I was reading is like, this is the kids, because they are innocents, you know, they are the ones who really appreciate what he was doing. This is why he wants to give this to Pepe, because he really know what this means for Pepe. And other thing is like, for me, the doctor is like, look like he's a good person, but at the same time, when he say, this is a beautiful job, but you know, maybe you could be an architect. You would have been an extraordinary architect. That means he's trying to tell the guy, oh, you know, you are poor person, you know. This is what I think. And he's like, okay, you did it, but you know, you are poor. This is just for other type of people. You are not an educated person. You know, like, beautiful job, but you are not the person who was supposed to be doing this job.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I feel with the doctor. I don't like the doctor, because another thing he's questioning, like, because he won the case, is like, they tell you, did they tell you what exactly what they want? Then, you know, did I offer you something? You know, questioning, like, to make him feel like, oh no, yeah, you're right, I'm gonna give it to you. But Baltasar is showing that like he has a word and he is gonna give this to the child.
Colleen, did you want to say something there too? I thought I heard her voice.
Yeah, I thought so too, but
Maybe it's, go ahead, Susan, and then we'll circle back. Yeah, there's.
I don't know if I'm on.
Yeah, now we can hear
Yeah.
you, Colleen. We can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, I don't know what I did.
Go ahead, Colleen.
So
I don't know.
Colleen, feel free to comment, Colleen, and then we'll go to Susan. We can't see you. If you want to turn on your camera, you can, but you don't have to. It's up to you.
Okay, I don't know how.
I'll just let you know that if you go over to, you know, depending on whether you're on an iPad or a phone, it's in different places, but there's like a little video camera that's on my screen. It's at the bottom left. There's the mute button, and right next to it is a little video. And if you click on
Was
that
it start
video,
video?
and you can, if you do
Yes.
start video, we'll see you. But you know, you don't have to. I
Did that
wasn't saying
work?
that to insist, just to
you
invite
go.
you so we can see you and meet you. Hello, we can see you.
All right,
That's great.
still getting used to this Zoom stuff.
There you go. No, I mean, listen, it took me a long time. I still sometimes get something off. It's fine. It's fine. But good for you for coming. Thank you for coming. And there,
Okay.
now you learned how to turn on your video. So that's that you'll already take one thing away. That's great.
Okay, I learned something now.
So if you want to make a comment, then feel free, or we can let Susan go and you can think about what you were going to say. I didn't want to cut you off, but I wasn't sure.
No. Oh, because I forgot what I was gonna say.
Okay, well, we'll come back. You know, just chime in whenever you feel like it. Yeah, Susan, let's hear what you had to
To
say.
say I'm gonna be like those people at, you know, book clubs that it's never me, like I'm trying to think like Catcher in the Rye, the people who kind of don't like Holden Caulfield, say, no, he's just insane. He's just, you know, I kind of think that Balthazar is just very kind of self-destructive. And I'm sort of kind of, when I read it, I was remembering that, you know, about how Marquez, you know, to me, he seems like he really, you know, does not like rich people. I think he's probably very kind of a, you know, leftist. I just remember in 100 Years of Solitude, he just did not like the rich. And
You're right. You're
Yeah.
right.
And it just kind of seems like, the doctor had probably just as much of a valid kind of selfless reason to get the cage. He wanted it for his wife, who was, an invalid, and he was going to pay the guy. And, what about Ursula? He kind of could have thought a little bit about Ursula. And then I guess, like in the end, I mean, he seems really pretty caddish. I guess Marquez is making the rich people to be so caddish, but they're more considerate to their families. And, Balthazar, I mean, what is he doing? He didn't take any money. He didn't get any money. So he basically didn't make any money for 2 weeks. He could have made, I guess it was a lot of money. He could have given the bird cage to the doctor's poor wife. And I don't really see, like, was he spiting the rich guy, or what, what was that all about? And then, of course, the end, I guess he got into debt, and he was, to add insult to injury to Ursula, not only did he not take any money, but now he's kind of, like whoring around or whatever, just not being, not being like a great guy. So that's kind of how I feel about, I'm not crazy about Balthazar.
I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. And on the other hand, he's sort of a hero in the town because they're all cheering that he got
They
this
thought
money
Got the
out of
money.
Montiel because he didn't tell them otherwise. So basically he's lying by not setting them straight and celebrating this, so-called fame that's kind of not, he's famous for having created this beautiful cage, but then he becomes famous for getting a lot of money out of Montiel, which actually didn't happen. So what is Ursula going to say when he comes home? Hungover, no shoes. The story ends and we don't, there's like,
On his face.
yeah. So he got some attention from some ladies, and then he's gonna come home, like it's 5 a.m. So he was sort of laying there in the street all night or something, or outside of the bar, outside of the billiard hall. So what's gonna happen when he gets home?
And like at the very beginning, it kind of sets it up that he's been with Ursula for 4 years and he didn't marry her and he didn't have children. It's just sort of, I don't know. I'm puzzled by this because Marquez is sort of making him, he's the working class hero, but the rich men seem like better people than he is.
Well, what does everybody else think?
I think he's above everybody. He's one. I mean, if you know artists, how they are, they always rise. They're always a little bit, seems to me, above everybody else because of what they present to their audience. I think Balthazar is a complex person. He's down to earth in a way, and he's not worried about money. But when he gets money, he loses it. He goes to the bar and he starts drinking. So I think there's a lot of different parts to Balthazar, and whatever comes his way, I guess he feels the way to act this way or act that way.
Yeah, and I think that he also in this particular scene here, I think Marcus is portraying, the society. Sometimes, it pictures exactly what people are doing at that time. I mean, I recall as a kid in my neighborhood, a lot of drinking, people were not getting married. I mean, that was something that people did not do. This is something new, that people get married to start a family. And I think that's what might be what he's projecting here, portraying the reality of a society where people are very loose in a way. As you were saying, Susan, the Marcus presents what he conceived as the society at the time. I mean, it's not that he's against rich people, it's that the oppression that these people are put under by the rich is what he really is writing
See
about.
that?
Yeah, and so in this point here where this guy basically, you know, is, instead of making money, he instead of that, he goes and wastes himself with his friends. I mean, we don't know what happened to Ursula. You know, we don't know. It appears from the beginning of the story. You know, she's concerned about money. So this guy is not really responsible when it comes to being, you know, getting money for the family. I mean, she's the one that probably is more concerned about.
Oh, yeah, you're right. You know, he consults with her about the price. She tells him to ask a little more. She's
Right.
sort of the businesswoman.
Yeah,
Yeah,
she's
you
worried,
are.
she's worried about the money and paying the bills.
Yeah,
Where he,
yeah, Yeah.
Can I say something?
sure.
Okay. Yeah, it's like, you see how this is like two different families. You know, Baltasar and Ursula are one family, but they don't follow the rules, but the society, you know, like they are not married, they're living together. They had no kids, they are not doing what society say they were supposed to do. And then the other side, that's Montiel, is a rich guy, you know, who had a wife, who had a kid, you know, they follow the rules, but inside the heart is totally different. You know, it's like they show something, but inside they are totally different. Because Baltasar, you know, he is not the example, but he had a good heart. You know, it's like people try to show what they are not really inside. That's what I think.
Right.
Very good.
Here's
Yes.
a passage that picks up a little bit on what everybody's been saying, that in the story on page 110, if you want to look. He goes to their house with that expression of decorous candor with which the poor approach the houses of the wealthy. That's kind of in the middle of the page. And then a little further down, a new paragraph. Baltasar was no stranger to Jose Montiel's house. On different occasions, because of his skill and forthright way of dealing, he had been called in to do minor carpentry jobs, but he never felt at ease among the rich. He used to think about them, with their ugly and argumentative wives, about their tremendous surgical operations, and he always experienced a feeling of pity. When he entered their houses, he couldn't move without dragging his feet. So that's
What does that mean?
such an interesting way of showing how it sounds to me like he feels uncomfortable. He doesn't feel at ease. He feels hesitant. He has to sort of drag his feet. He feels tense around.
It gets the feeling that he doesn't want to be there.
Yeah. And then he has pity for them. I'm sorry,
Mhm.
Colleen.
like he doesn't belong.
But also then it says that he has pity. He takes pity on them. He sees them as very unhappy people. He doesn't, he's not jealous of them. He doesn't really want what they have. He feels that they're not happy people. The woman is obsessed with death. Montiel is so nervous he doesn't take a nap with the fan on, even in the heat, because he has to be vigilant about any noises that come up. Everyone's kind of like paranoid and tense. And so the picture that we get of these people through this narrator is just of, the doctor and the Montiel family. Neither of those families sounds particularly happy.
Well, I also believe it might be because it's so hard to try to keep the money in the bank. It really is. I mean, how
Well,
many
and
rich
there's-
people, right? How many rich people do you see that? It's so important to have money, but sometimes it overwhelms
Yeah.
you,
Yeah.
and it portrays to people outside. I mean, look how he's treated when he comes into the house. You know,
Yeah.
and he's a simple man with all his his cage. and that's why I think Balazar is above everybody, because yeah, he knows who he is, and the others have issues with, you know, the cage for who. It's so it is hard sometimes. I sometimes feel sorry for rich people because of all the you know, that top 10 list that comes out of the richest person. I mean, I really, even if I had money, I wouldn't want to be on that list, because you're basically a target, you know. People are always criticizing you for not doing this or not doing that. I think it's very hard. You have to be a strong person to, you know, sustain yourself with criticism coming at you almost every day.
Okay, can I say something maybe? For me, this is the meaning, maybe for you guys know, but it's almost on the end when Baltasar asking, oh, what is Montiel? And the wife say, Montiel is taking a bath, you know, but they say, in reality, Jose Montiel had time to battle. He was giving himself an urgent alcohol rub. You know, for me, it's like, he tried to be one type of person, clean person, the good feel, you know, like he had good feelings, but he's not, you know. This is good for me because he had no time to take a bath. For me, it's no, he don't have time to shower with water. He is not a good person, and he just showing like he is a perfect good person.
So he's doing like the superficial thing.
Yes.
Instead of the full, yeah, no, that's
Yes.
so interesting. That's so interesting.
Yes.
All these comments are really so interesting. Well, we're a few minutes after 7. How about, I was just going to ask one more question. I don't want to keep people, you know, too late.
Can you give us your email? I'd like to just send you an email.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sure. You know what? I'll put it in the chat.
Okay.
Put it in the chat right here. There we go. It's in the chat, so you'll be able to see it. Yeah. And Jose has my number and my everything also. He knows all about me. So I wanted to go back to one last thing in the story, and there are just so many things that you know, I think another thing that's interesting in this story, maybe we could conclude with something about this, is, you know, gift giving. I mean, this was maybe not originally intended as a gift because he thought he was going to get paid for it, but then he preferred to give it as a gift. You know, we saw what happened in the story, but you know, can you think about times that you were given a gift that you didn't expect, or that you gave someone a gift that you didn't, maybe hadn't plotted it out, went shopping, wrapped it, had a card, you know, but somehow spontaneously? That kind of spontaneous gift giving is really something so interesting in this story. And it a lot of the story turns on that particular gesture, that he's there in the moment. His wife isn't there to tell him what to do, and he just makes a decision. No, the cage is for you. Here, Pepe, take it. It's for you. It's a gift. So what does that tell us about gift giving? Do you remember a time that someone gave you a gift unexpectedly, or that you just spontaneous felt, I just have to give this to this person? I think it's an interesting case that, you know, makes us think about generosity, about what moves us to give gifts and things like that. So I'm just wondering about, you know, gifts. We're not at a holiday gift giving time right at the moment, but
Right.
I have 5 nieces and nephews and 9 great nieces and nephews, and it seems like I'm at the post office every week mailing packages and gift cards and things to all of these, you know, sweet people in my life. But, you know, I know that's planned, you know, but I know that it's on the calendar. I'm thinking of them, and it gives me a lot of joy to do it. But this is something where it's like all of a sudden it became a gift when that wasn't the original intention. So, and of course, Baltasar is one of the 3 wise men. So we have the whole, you know, bringing gifts to baby Jesus. There's like kind of a subtext there, which is also interesting because Garcia Marquez was not too fond of the Catholic Church. But But that's another interesting, sort of message going on there that some people comment on. So I'm just wondering about if you have, any of you wants to share sometime that you gave someone a gift or someone gave you a gift that was maybe particularly special or unexpected or something handmade or anything that's kind of connected.
I'll tell you a story. When I was working as an engineer, I used to travel a lot. And there were times where, I would be on first class or business class or whatever. And one of those trips, I was coming from Australia via San Francisco. And we took a plane from San Francisco to Newark. And somehow the plane went terrible. One of the engines died. And maybe 2 hours into the flight, we have to return.
Was it Pan Am?
No. This was, I don't remember, probably United. It was most likely in the 90s or 2000, around there. Anyway, the plane came back to the airport, and they tried to fix the plane, and eventually they decided to give us another plane, and whatever happened. But there was a young man who was really shaken up by this experience. And I could tell, he was really in bad shape. And he basically went back to the plane once we were ready to go, go on board again. And I realized that, this guy is in good shape. I'm going to give him my seat, first class. So I went and I approached him. I said, you can sit in my seat. And I told the attendants, he can sit in my seat. Anyway, the guy, when he got off from the plane, the family was waiting for him there. And then he just pointed at me like, hey, that guy gave me a seat.
Wow.
I can remember that experience. And I, sometimes I like to do that. I like to be generous when some people are in trouble, and I can get them out of the spot where they are. I try to do that. It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling, yeah.
Beautiful.
It is.
Wow. Anybody else want to share some kind of memory or anecdote about a gift or something? I have hundreds of questions that I could ask and pieces to reread where the language is so interesting and things like that. There's never enough time because these stories are so rich. They have so much.
Yeah.
But I think it was really fun talking about it with all of you and hearing your reactions. And so this is what we're going to be doing every Monday with a different story. So I hope that you enjoyed it and you'll come back. And there also will be, at the end of the program, let me just say this, there will be a certificate if you've attended most of the sessions. I mean, we have 5, usually a program is 8, but because of timing with, a lot of things going on in September and kind of a shift in our mode from summer and everything, we decided to squeeze in these 5 this time. But usually if you go to the majority of the sessions, then you get a certificate, and we'll make sure that we send them to Jose and he can, print them so you can pick them up there.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's just kind of a fun thing, not that you need it for anything, special, but it's sort of fun to just have the recognition, with your name on it and everything. And so I wanted to say that, but if you have to miss a session, it's okay. Something comes up. And if some more people join us next week, I think there's some others on the list that couldn't make it tonight. And so, it's each session is kind of its own full chapter. So it's not like you're behind if you miss a session. Just please come anytime that you can. So don't feel.
Are you going to concentrate on Garcia Marquez, or you have other writers?
No, we're gonna have other authors. We're gonna have other authors. And
can we make a petition? Can you inject somewhere Dostoevsky?
What
What are you doing next week? What's next week?
I'm trying to remember the order. I have the 5 stories that I chose, and now I'm trying to remember. I have to go look at my list, and then I can tell you. But Jose will send it, close to the time. You don't really have to read it in advance, but it's certainly fine if you do. You're welcome to. Here, I'll tell you what it is.
That's a good suggestion, Father. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you
Yeah.
want to go to the human
Yeah.
core.
The human core. There you go.
We try to use stories that are not too long because we don't want to use up too much time in
Right.
and so that's one of a little bit of a constraint sometimes if a story is very, very long. Now
Okay.
I know where I have it. We are reading a story next week by Chinua Achebe,
Okay.
who is a Nigerian writer,
Mhm.
very, very celebrated Nigerian writer, who taught in the US for a long time. He taught at Bard College as a professor for a long time. So we're reading a story by him next week. So I will send it to you, Jose, so that
Okay.
you can send it. And then, so it's going to be quite an array of different voices.
Okay,
And,
good. Excellent.
we have, hundreds and hundreds of stories that we've sort of pre-approved. And then whoever is facilitating gets to choose what the stories are. And we don't target them around, for example, in prisons, we don't read stories about crime. In drug rehab centers, we don't read stories about substance abuse. The idea is that any story can open up such rich discussion if it's a really good story. So the stories that I chose are kind of ones that I particularly love, but I have many, many, many that I love and that I've had, good discussions with over the years with groups. So I sort of know that they work. Every now and then I try a new one out and I've really never had one not work. They all work, but I have to say that the Garcia Marquez stories are absolutely foolproof. And
Yes.
so they always get people going. There's always a lot to discuss. There's sometimes disagreements. Not everybody has to agree. And it's fascinating, really. Something about his stories just really sparks a lot of imagination and a lot of feeling.
Okay.
So
All right. Marcy, one thing I think we have to thank Cheyenne also.
oh, yes, thank you. Yes, Cheyenne is the executive director of this organization called People and Stories, Gente y Cuentos. And I'll put here the website in case you want to take a look. There's some little videos, 2-3 minute videos of groups going on, doing exactly what we were doing. There's a great moment where there's like a discussion going on, very, very heated. And everyone's like kind of yelling and gesticulating with their hands. And then they interviewed this person after that session in one of our videos. And she says, "We were not arguing. We were discussing." Very, very, it's really cute in Spanish. Well, I think she spoke in English, but the group was in Spanish. And so if you want to take a look at the organization, there's a lot of information there about the things that we do. And so Cheyenne, oh my gosh, what's her last name? It's escaping me at the moment. I've known her for years. That's terrible, but I just always with the first name with her. But she's our director, and she does a lot of getting grants that allow us to be able to train more people and do more outreach in communities. And we have a lot of programs in the tri-state area of Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and New York, all over the place with migrant farm workers in clinics, in hospitals, and senior citizen centers, all kinds of different groups, in churches and all over the place. And we also have programs in Latin America. I've trained people in Colombia, in Chile, in Argentina, and I have another coworker in the group who's trained people and has groups going in Puerto Rico. And the founder of People and Stories, Gente y Cuentos, had a daughter who was living in France, and she started doing the program in French with senior citizen groups and in a prison. So 3 languages.
Yes.
But as you can see, the program is not about trying to learn a language. It really needs to be conducted in the language that people are used to speaking, but you really don't have to have good reading skills. I've noticed that in some of the prisons I've worked in, many of the participants have learning disabilities and have very poor reading skills, but they have unbelievable memories. They remember every character's name. They remember the sequence of the story. They could repeat the whole story. So it's amazing the skills that they have of memory and contrast and analyzing. So it's really, we've done this program with blind people who, could read Braille, or they can listen to audiobooks, but they're not reading so much on their own without those tools, and they can hear the story, and so it's very flexible, and we even have been flexible enough to do it on Zoom, and this is my first Zoom session of People and Stories, so I'm glad to see how nicely it works, and
Yes.
and we'll get even better at it. We'll get even better at it as we go along. So I wish you all a really great week, and come back and bring a friend. And we're just trying to make sure we don't have more than 25, because it's 25 faces that can fit on one screen, just so that we can all see each other. But I think we'll be good. And if we have more than that, happy problem. No problem. No problem. And it was a pleasure to meet each of you. Thank you. And hear
Thank you.
your thoughtful comments and sharing about yourselves and being so open about your opinions and everything. I really enjoyed every minute. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you, Marcy.
I'll see you next week. My pleasure. Thank you, Jose,
Yes.
for setting everything
Thank you.
up. And
Sure.
Thank you.
and we will look forward to next week. Have
All
a good
right,
week
then.
and stay well.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
José,
Sí.
puedes enviar, porque esto yo lo recibí recién esta mañana. ¿Puedes enviarlo antes del fin de semana para tener chance de leerlo?
Yes, I will. The moment I get it, I promise you, yo lo mando, okay?
Gracias.
De nada, Pilar. Thank you again, Pilar. Muchas gracias por venir.
No, gracias por invitarme. Ok.
Okay,
Adiós.
ciao. Ciao.
Ok, bye bye.
Bye-bye.